What's going on, good people? It's your main man, Joe Fleetwood, the hustler, and welcome to the Joe Fleetwood podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This is our second show to start the new year off with. You can listen to this podcast on all your major streaming platforms. So the one you're listening to it on and more. Also, make sure you go check out joefleetwood.com. You can get all of my social media links. You can also get you some Joe Fleetwood swag and other things on the website. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification so you can get notified when I'm dropping a new podcast like I am today. So without any further ado, let's hop right into it. Now, 2024 jumped off something fierce. I'm talking about the Katt Williams interview to start the year off with a bang. And when I tell you, Katt Williams went in on everybody, it seems like, in the comedy community. And he went at some of the big dogs. I'm talking about Ricky Smiley, Cedric the Entertainer. He even went at hip hop artists. He went at Ludacris. Just dropping bombs left and right. I'm talking about on some Ice Cube, no Vaseline back in the 80s NWA style. You know what I mean? He just went in. But it hasn't stopped there. And then also you can go check out my podcast I did as far as the reaction and talking about that whole podcast between Katt Williams and Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay. It's called Cat Out of the Bag. That was the first episode we did beginning of the year. But the firestorm didn't stop there. If you guys have not been checking on the media clashes between Stephen A. Smith and Jason Whitlock, you've been living under a rock. Because if you are on TikTok, if you're on Facebook, Instagram, it has been all over the place. But just in case you are one of those people who have not heard anything about it, the way I found out about it was on TikTok, is when I heard Stephen A. Smith respond to Jason Whitlock. Now, I will say this. The response that Stephen A. Smith gave, I don't want you guys to because I'm not going to play what Jason Whitlock said, but what I will do is just give you a little background on it. So Stephen A. Smith wrote a book of memoirs called Straight Shooter. Now, I remember him doing his promo run for the book because I remember seeing an interview with him on The Breakfast Club. You know, he was talking about what was in the book. And, I'm like, all right, cool. The man writing the book. Now, since he did that interview, I hadn't heard anything about it, good or bad. But when I heard that he was responding to Jason Whitlock's review of the book, I said, all right, you know what I mean? Let me go ahead and go do some research on this. So I started, checking the reviews on Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, and then I wanted to see, was it a bestseller? Because in another interview, I heard Stephen A. Smith say that he had a bestseller. So I said, all right, let me go check it out, man. Got to fact check everybody, right? So I did some research, went to the Associated Press website. Come to find out that in the category of hardcover nonfiction, Stephen A. Smith's book, Straight Shooter, is ranked number 3 as a bestseller. So when I checked the reviews on Amazon, I want to say on Amazon, he had like a 4.6 or 4.8 book review of people who have actually read the book. And then in Barnes & Nobles, he had like a 4.3 or 4.4, something like that, out of 5 stars. So the book has been doing really well. So Jason Whitlock goes on to kind of point some things out that he feels in the book are straight up lies, or he may be over exaggerating things. And if you haven't, paid attention to sports analysts like that, you might not know who Jason Whitlock is, but you definitely know who Stephen A. Smith is because he's had his fair share of run-ins with athletes for some of the things that he has said. However, when it comes to Stephen A. Smith, a lot of the criticism that he gives in certain cases, I feel like it can be constructive criticism. At other times, I feel like he pick and chooses certain players to go hard at. So in the grand scheme of things, man, when it comes to these sports analysts, you really have to be cognizant and mindful of what it is they're saying and take it at face value, and then do some of your own research as well. Now, one of the things I do appreciate is when I see ex-players become sports analysts, because they can give an insight that guys who have not played the game can't give. And then when they do that, I appreciate it a lot more, because they've been there. They've been through the trenches, and especially the ones that have made it all the way to, championships and got rings and stuff. So, they can provide you with an insight that a normal analyst just can't give you. So, but I don't want to get too far down into that rabbit hole. What we can do is, man, I'm going to hop right into the Stephen A. Smith interview, or not interview, but his response to Jason Whitlock. So check it out.
But I ask for everybody indulgence for one show and one show only. And please do not allow this to be a reflection on my character, because this is not how I act every day. But I mean it from my soul when I say this is the worst human being I've ever known. I don't know of another human being worse than Jason Whitlock. He is a piece of shit. He's the dude that's going to have a funeral and ain't going to be no pallbearers. Might be 2 people to show up. He's that dude. He is the absolute worst. And he lies. And he incriminates. And he tries to set people up to fail, to big up himself, because he can't do it on his own. He had a television show. He failed. He's had opportunities one time after another. He doesn't measure up. And now he's coming at the big dog. And let me tell you something right now. I am the big dog. I ain't the only one. There's plenty. Skip Bayless, apologies to him too for bringing up Jason Whitlock's name in the same sentence as him. But we all know what time it is. Everyone knows. All the executives at all the networks, they know what a piece of shit he is. And they begged me not to do this. But even my pastor, A.R. Bernard, said,
so yeah, that was Stephen A. Smith's response, man. If you want, you can go check out Jason Whitlock's review of the book on his podcast. And I got to tell you, I look at it like this, right? There's a such thing as constructive criticism, and then just straight up hate. And a lot of times what I see when you hear Jason Whitlock speak, you only hear a criticism, and it's not coming from a good place. There is never a solution of how an individual player can get better, what should have been done in a situation to make it better or to make the player better. You only hear degrading comments regarding athletes. That's it. And I got to take, when it comes to him, this is something that has been going on for years. It's not like this is a situation that just happened, and the run-in with Stephen A. Smith is brand new, right? So what I want to do is take you guys back to when Allen Iverson was still playing in Philly. Now, as many of you know, if you follow basketball, Allen Iverson brought into the NBA that swag that you see in the hip hop culture, right? I mean, when he came into the league, right, he had the tattoos, he had the sleeves, he had the cornrows, the jewelry, the entourage. He brought all of that into the league with him. Wearing wave caps during interviews and stuff like that. So, of course, the NBA is going to take a look at what's going on with Allen Iverson. This is the league MVP at the time, right? So Howard Stern comes out with a dress code. And I think a lot of people saw it coming. But, which is crazy to have this podcast talking about Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Stephen A. had some criticism towards Allen Iverson during this time frame too. But once again, it's a different type of criticism. So the thing that Stephen A. Smith wanted to get out to people was like, hey, because it was, and I don't know if it was the media who did it, if it was him responding to a comment that Allen Iverson made after a game. But what Stephen A. Smith said, and I'm paraphrasing, by the way, was like, hey, for the guys that are coming into the league, do not think Allen Iverson came into the league that way. Because when it was draft night, you had on a suit and tie just like everybody else. You know what I mean? So now that you're here and you're doing, you're dressing how you want to dress, don't act like you didn't comply early on, because you did. Now, when you have criticism like that, I think it's helpful to the players that are coming in, because it's like, hey, don't get it twisted. Yeah, Allen Iverson is this, but when he came into the league on draft night, you had on a suit and tie just like everybody else. Now that you're here and you proved yourself, you're doing your thing. And I think that if you follow basketball closely and you have dreams going into the NBA, it's criticism like that you need to hear to understand that, hey, I'm applying for this job. Once I get the job, maybe I can move how I want to move after the fact and then make some changes later on. But that's not what Jason Whitlock did at all. So what I am going to do, because I think I'm going to play something of Stephen A. Smith, it's only right that I be objective and play something of Jason Whitlock, right? And, to judge, let me say this, because everybody has an opinion, and I can have my opinion just like they have their opinions on players. I don't think Jason Whitlock is good for any media outlet that he's at if he doesn't change the way he approaches being a sports analyst in general. Everything is complete hate. If there's no constructive outcome or resolution to it, you're simply doing nothing but hating. That's all you're doing. That's it. And when you listen to anything that he says, it has absolutely no structure when it comes to making a situation or a player better. None whatsoever. But I digress. So let's go ahead and get into this interview. And like I said, it was his take on the commissioner, and I think I called him Howard Stearns earlier. It's David Stearns. I'm sorry if I did. So correction. I think David Stearns, put out a dress code regarding, the way players dress. And of course, Allen Iverson being the point of dispute.
NBA, good read or bad read?
I'm going to surprise you. It was a good read because it forced the NBA to put rules in place to try to stop the next Allen Iverson from destroying their league. So David Stern institutes a dress code in reaction to Allen Iverson bringing way too much of the hip-hop thing to the NBA. One of the biggest lies ever told is that hip-hop has somehow been good for the NBA. It hasn't been. It has nothing to do with the values that sports have always built themselves around. Music is rebellious. Hip-hop is rebellious. All rock and roll, it's all rebellious. Sports are patriotic. The NBA, everybody loves the NBA. I love the NBA. It could be doing better if it stayed true to true sports values. It could make even more money. Allen Iverson, to me, confused a lot of these young NBA players into thinking they were selling hip-hop records instead of selling basketball. So,
I think he...
So, yeah, I don't know what hip-hop did, what hip-hop had to do with it. You know what I mean? And I say that because hip-hop directly may have influenced Allen Iverson, but you can't blame all of hip-hop for, the choices that Allen Iverson made to dress the way he did. Now, I'm not saying that because I want to draw a line between the two, because I don't. I love hip-hop. I love Allen Iverson. I love the game of basketball. And my opinion on that is that hip-hop has done wonders for any and everything that it touches. Because from where I stand, every time you go to a basketball game, right, you are going to hear a hip-hop song during a timeout. and you're going to hear one at halftime. But it's not just basketball. You go to an NBA game. Let's take the Super Bowl, for instance. Not too long ago, we just had Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg perform at a halftime show. So to completely say that hip hop is ruining the value of basketball, that's just straight up fucking crazy. You know what I mean? I think that was probably the worst take anyone could have had when it came to the dress code and what David Stearns was trying to do as far as Allen Iverson is concerned. You want to implement a dress code, that's cool. And I get it. And no, anybody that came to a basketball game understood that they were there to see a basketball game. They were not buying hip hop tickets. Like his complete, to me, I don't even know which way to go with this, man, because there's so many different points I could take, and there's so many different ways I can jab at what he had to say. But I'll leave it at this, and just the entire take that he had when it came to it was completely off, completely unfounded, and it made no sense whatsoever. But in true Allen Iverson form, he held his tongue for quite some time, but he did not let it slide. And he wanted to let people know that, hey, I still remember. And of course, since this guy has been in the news as of late for making some more, bad comments, Allen Iverson took to the podcast All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. So, if you guys didn't have a chance to check that out, or if you haven't seen the clips, of course, I'm going to bring it to you, because what I like to do is keep things in perspective, but also, give you a point of reference to understand, like, hey, these are the things that happen. And if you want to check some of these things out, man, I'll put it in the show notes. You can, that's if you're listening to this on Spotify, but you could also go to, once again, joefleetwood.com, where you can listen to this podcast. You can find all the show notes and stuff like that attached to it. Just go to the menu and click podcast on the website. So, but with no further ado, man, let's get into Allen Iverson's response when it came to Jason Whitlock on the All the Smoke podcast.
Crazy. I know this God. It's one guy that I want you. I'm looking. What camera can I look at? Do I supposed to look at? It's one guy. I know you know who I'm talking to. I know you hate me. And trust me, I don't hate nobody. Yes, I do. I hate you. It's one guy that you know I'm talking to, that they talking about right now.
I know too.
It's one guy. No, it ain't who you think it is.
Oh, okay.
I got love for Skip. Okay. I got love for Skip. So, I know people think it's Skip. It's not you. You know what I mean? But it's a guy that do exactly what you do. And just trust me, the way you hate me, motherfucker, I hate you too.
That is mutual.
You know what I mean? The feeling is so mutual, and you don't help me, and I don't help you, and I'm fine. I'm fine out here, regardless of how much you talk about me. All right. Just know.
So as you can see, that went back some years, where Allen Iverson has had issue with Jason Whitlock. I know a lot of people may be saying, hey, he didn't say his name and he didn't speak to a particular individual. We all know it's Jason Whitlock. Like I said, if you grew up during that time frame, you understand exactly who Allen Iverson is talking about. And he's not the only player who has had to deal with Jason Whitlock. Now, more and for you, for the younger generation, I would say those who are younger than me, so millennials and on, LeBron James has had an issue with him. Now, and what I want to do is, if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, you'll be able to actually see the article. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the article to you. Now, to put things in the proper context, this was when LeBron James, he still had his home in Brentwood, but he was living in Los Angeles. So somebody actually vandalized his home. They spray painted the N-word across his gate. And LeBron went on to do an interview where he said, you know, his family is safe. Everybody is safe. He also made mention of Emmett Till, as if he can't believe, you know, the times are still the way they are when it comes to racism. And, you know, it doesn't matter what class you're in financially. No one is above racism. Matter of fact, I don't care where you go in the world, and I don't care what race you are. You could be subjected to racism. No one, I don't care how much money you make or what social or economic class you feel you're in, you're not above racism. Like, it could happen to you potentially. So when asked the question about the LeBron James situation, here's how Jason Whitlock responded. He said, I think it's a disrespectful inconvenience for LeBron James, said Whitlock of the incident. He alleged that the N-word sprayed painted on his $20 million Brentwood home. He wasn't there. His family wasn't there. He heard about it. Whitlock says he felt like James was acting as a victim while speaking about the vandalism to reporters, claiming that a black man in America, being a black man in America, has it tough. Racism is an issue in America, but it is primarily an issue for poor. It's not a LeBron James issue, said Whitlock. He has removed himself from the damages and the ravages of real racism. He may have an occasional disrespectful interaction with someone. It's a disrespectful inconvenience. Whitlock seemed to have the biggest problem with LeBron James comparing his situation to Emmett Till, an African-American teenager who was brutally murdered in Mississippi in 1955 at the age of 14. The people that murdered Emmett Till got off. An all-white jury let them off. There was no real investigation. The whole town was against them. LeBron James' $20 million Brentwood home gets vandalized, and I see 2 or 3 police cars trying to get to the bottom of it. LeBron's staff, I'm sure, cleaned up the spray paint within hours, and this ain't Emmett Till, said Whitlock. Like I said, it's there's no telling what you're going to get from a Jason Whitlock interview. You may think it's going to go one way, and I can assure you, if he has anything to do with it, it's going to go completely left. It's just going to happen, man. Because he's going to say whatever outlandish thing he's going to say without any sense of compassion or understanding of what he's actually doing. But here's the crazy part, man. This man can go out of his way to say all these different things, and yet he continues to get work. But I had to sit back and think about it. Where is he getting the work from? Fox. That's where he's getting the work from. Now, is he still at Fox? From my understanding, he is not. But throughout the years, he was constantly getting that check from Fox. So yeah, I mean that's and it makes sense. You know what I mean? It makes sense. So if you do follow Fox Sports, Fox News, it makes sense that a man of his character would be reporting on anything like that and get away with it for so many years. It would be with Fox. Now, I love sports. My favorite sport is basketball. Growing up, I played football, I played basketball, and I played a little bit of baseball. But basketball was always my thing. I went to college playing basketball. So yeah, it was my thing. And when I look at sports analysts, I would like them to have some type of I don't know, I guess you could call it experience in the sport. So I think it's great when I see ex-NBA players and NFL players working as sports analysts, because when they do this, it actually brings some, some validity to to the criticism that they're given, right? So, but that's not always to say that even prior athletes don't have some type of poor judgment when they're given their analytic opinion. You know, nobody is off the table when it comes to having a bad day and just saying some bullshit when it comes to another athlete, especially when it comes to the competitive nature of the sport. Because if you can no longer play the sport and you see somebody who's actively playing and you got a problem with it, it's hard for you not to address that problem. I completely understand it. Completely. You know what I mean? It makes sense, but you got to be careful about it. You know what I mean? If you want to say some bullshit about a player, you go say it to him directly and see what happens. But keep it strictly professional when you get behind that mic and you get in front of them cameras. Especially if it ain't, you know what I mean? Like you speaking this bullshit to the world. And at this point, you are a representative of whatever media outlet you're speaking for. You know what I mean? So I think you have a greater responsibility in that aspect when you're out here, you know, judging people. Because first of all, these athletes have cameras in their face every single day. They are constantly under scrutiny. I'm an advocate for the players, man. You know, I'm with you when you're right. I'm with you when you're wrong. And when you're wrong, own up to it. You just gotta be the bigger person and own up to it. Now, I'll give you an example, right? Here lately, and I just heard this on Stephen A. Smith talking about this, but Zion Williams, right? Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley have been extremely critical of Zion. Does Zion still have what it takes, the athleticism, the power, the leaping ability to continue to be dominant in the NBA? He does. He still has it. Is his weight a problem? Yes. You can see it in some games. He's having trouble getting up and down the floor. When Charles Barkley, who also had a weight issue when he got into the league, I want to say it was Moses Malone who told him, like, hey, bro, you fat. You need to lose some weight. And, you know, Charles took that to heart and he lost the weight. And his game improved tremendously. And he's only trying to pass that same message on to Zion. Shaq is doing the same thing. Right? Here lately, Shannon Sharp, shout out to him and Club Shay Shay and Nightcap Ocho Cinco. Shannon Sharp recently had a few choice words for Zion regarding his weight also. So in situations like that, man, I think it's great to hear other athletes give you that criticism, but then also like, hey man, you got to do the work. If you do this, you know what I mean? Your game is going to change, you know, X, Y, and Z. So I think in those aspects, you know, that's good criticism. That's being a good sports announcer, and that's being a good analyst. You know, and that's what I would like to see from more sports announcers. Now, let's talk about one of the bad ones. And let me take that back. I don't want to say he's one of the bad ones, but this is what I mean by you can have a off night where you can just let some, you know, let emotions fly and just, you know, just say whatever the fuck you want to say. and it's just the wrong thing to say. We're all human. No one is going to get off from making human mistakes. You know, lapse in judgments. It's going to happen, right? So going back to the time where I was coming up watching basketball, man, Wally Szczerbiak, right? And I'm pretty sure it's been in social media. I think it came up a few times talking about his what he said about Tyrese Halliburton. You know, call him a wannabe all-star. So if you haven't heard that, of course, I am going to provide you with Wally Szczerbiak making a statement regarding Tyrese Halliburton as a wannabe all-star. And it's completely unfounded and completely unnecessary.
18 seconds left. Step back. Mr. Supposed wannabe fake all-star with the big miss. His last chance down 3 for the wannabe all-star. Let me keep it that way. He's in his second year. He's a very good player. He's not going to make the all-star team. A guy like Julius Randle or Jalen Brunson will make it over Tyrese Halliburton. Tonight we saw why.
So, for those of you who don't know, those are Knicks players, which he's making a bid in for them to be all-stars over Tyrese Halliburton. All while Wally Szczerbiak being a sports announcer for the Knicks. So, yeah. But, sometimes every dog has its day, so to speak. And you got to come back around and you got to pay the piper. You know what I mean? You just can't say some bullshit about somebody and think that you're going to go through life and not see them, or at least not get called out on the shit you said. Because it's going to happen at some point. And when it does happen, you just gotta bite the bullet. So let's talk about karma. And when karma came back around for good old Wally Szczerbiak, let's check it out.
Close to another 2020 game. And after that last play, he looked over to his favorite announcer, Wally Szczerbiak, and kind of gave you a look. This goes back to the comments you said a couple of years ago. We addressed earlier, and you apologized and said, hey, I was wrong about the young man and his potential.
So, yeah, sometimes, you're going to have to humble yourself and reality sets in and you get called out on your bullshit. You got to make amends, make peace. So big up to Wally Szczerbiak for doing that. He did the right thing. You know what I mean? Regardless of what opinions people may have had of him at the time that he said it. You know what I mean? He got right with God and himself and made the change. So shout out to Wally Szczerbiak, man, for manning up, owning up to what he said and what he did, and making it right. And that's what it's all about, man. If Jason Whitlock would just, I don't know what to say, man. I don't know if the dude needs a hug. He needs some, a trip down MLK somewhere. I don't know what to tell you, man. It just, I don't know, man. I guess it is what it is. I like to believe that people can change. I like to believe that people have good intentions sometimes, but he has not showed. He's not showed that. He's not shown that in any of the interviews that he's done, in any of the takes that he's done. His podcast is wild. So if you like, there's no reason to pass judgment on Whitlock, right? And I say that because you can go listen to the stuff for your own self and do the research. And you come to the conclusion of whatever it is you come to. But you don't need me and my take on it to convince you of what type of person Jason Whitlock is. You can go do that all on your own. So I do want to say shout out to Stephen A. Smith for just, letting loose, man. Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you just got to let loose and give them the show no business, which is what I was hoping these comedians was going to do. Katt Williams give us a show, but apparently Katt Williams went a little bit too hard. You know what I mean? And another thing too, man, I want to give a shout out to all the guys who are sports guys, you know what I mean, athletes who started some great podcasts, man. Of course, I mentioned Club Shay Shay, Shannon Sharp, and then the Nightcap that he has with him and Ocho Cinco. You got New Heights with Jason and Travis Kelce. Then All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. Who else? Oh, how could I forget, man? And this is the perfect time to bring it up. Shout out to Cameron and Mace on their podcast, man. Straight up hilarious guys, man. I absolutely love those two, man. And I'm actually glad they got back together and they squashed the beef that they had over the years, man. Because they're a great duo. Great duo, man. And I'm talking about it is extremely, extremely funny. And man, this is crazy because I feel like I missed out on an opportunity. Because there was a situation on that podcast where Melissa Ford said some outrageous shit. Like it, at the time of where the Me Too movement was going, and then what's going on with Puffy and all these other cats. I don't want to spill the beans, man. Go and watch Cameron responds to Melissa Ford. She's on the Joe Budden podcast. Man, she said some wild stuff that could have got them, putting them boys in a bad light. So, shout out to Mace and Cameron for their podcast. Come and talk to me, man. Great podcast. And how can I forget? To me, this guy is a great storyteller when it comes to things that happen in the league. You know what I mean? And here's why I love these guys having podcasts, man, because they tell great stories, man. And it's stuff that we would not have known about if they weren't talking about it on their podcast. And that's Club 520. Jeff Teague tells some of the best stories, man. Jeff Teague tells some of the best stories. Hey, check out Club 520. Yes, I'm podcasting, man, but I will never, hate on a good podcast show, man. Them dudes got great shows. And then $1 Million Worth of Game with Wallow and Gilly. You know what I mean? That's another one that I love. And a lot of the people that are on those same shows are on their show or on all the other guys' podcasts that I named, because they have a lot of sports guys on their podcast as well. So, but that's all my time, guys, man. Thank you for coming and kicking it with me today on the Joe Fleetwood podcast. And like I said, man, make sure you go to joefleetwood.com if you want to catch the podcast and you don't subscribe to any other podcast platforms. And this show is on all major podcast platforms, but you can catch it just by going to joefleetwood.com, click on the menu, click podcast, JF podcast, excuse me. And all of my shows will be right there for you to listen to. Like I said, I'll have some of the links that I showed you guys, the clips in this podcast. Also, make sure you follow me on all my social media sites. Check out the Joe Fleetwood store. Get some, got some great stuff in there. You can go get a couple of gifts for your boo thing. You know what I mean? Your partner, your loved one. Go in there and check it out and see what I got to offer. Also, check us out on YouTube, man. Subscribe, hit that bell button, and you can actually see these videos. I also have the audio up there too, the RSS feed from the podcast from Spotify. So yeah, man. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in and staying with me for this show. Joe Fleetwood out. Peace.